is a lot. Coolest looking thing. Holy moly. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. We're starting the garden tour today in a place that I don't think I've ever shown on my YouTube channel. So we have 9 1/4 acres here in our little slice of southwestern Kentucky. And this is the back fence to our property. And on the fence line, we have something that I noticed last year, but is actually bearing this year. And this is one of those things that you just wish would pop up on your property. In the South, these are called May pops. They're also called passion fruits, green passion fruits. These guys never ripen to anything like yellow or purple like you might see with other types of passion fruit. And truthfully, we've picked off all the ripe ones already and collected them up off the ground and haven't eaten them. I did get some pictures though. These are an absolute delight. It's like getting a taste of the tropics in, not the tropics. We are kind of right on the line between the South and the North. So things like this are an absolute treat. You see this guy here? This one is not ready. It's still pretty firm. When they're ready, they actually tend to fall when they're at their ripest, but you can actually eat them when they start to look a little bit wilty and wrinkly. They're very easy to pop open and there's just beautiful seeds inside. And you eat them a lot like you would a pomegranate. You know how pomegranate has all those little like juice pockets with seeds inside. It is much like that as far as the experience of eating it, but it's a lot more like tropical mango with like a hint of banana in there type flavor. Very, very good. And I'm so excited to see this. So I have saved some seed from this so I can move some of it, in towards the part of the homestead that we frequent most often. But I also heard that you could take cuttings of this in order to propagate cuttings. Now, I don't think it's the right time of year for that, so I'm just gonna leave this alone, but we will be coming back and collecting these ripe fruits when they're ready. So if you've never seen a passion flower in person, they are so gorgeous, and these both have gone by. I don't think there are any out here right now that are going to open up nicely for me today because it's a little bit towards the end of the season for these. You can actually harvest and dry the leaves for a tea that tends to be beneficial for symptoms of menopause. So I may come back and do a leaf harvest at some point, but for now I'm gonna leave it and let it grow and do its thing. So I've gotten a lot of questions about the fall and winter garden and what seeds that I've started. So I took a short video last night showing our new seedlings. I'm gonna run that clip now and then we'll meet back in the greenhouse. Hi guys, so I have been getting some questions about the seeds that I have started for the fall time, and this is them. So a lot of you might remember back when I started some strawberry seeds in this potting soil here. This is Coast of Maine, the Bar Harbor blend. And the truth of it is, I was seeing some little roots come out of some of those seeds, but none of them ever actually took root and let their cotyledons out, or their first true leaves. None of them really actually germinated, and sometimes when the seed hulls won't come off the top of the little seedling, that can be a humidity issue. I was spraying them all the time and there was a humidity dome on them. But in any case, I decided to give the soil another chance with some of our fall and winter seedlings. And we had a pretty good germination rate. Now you're gonna see that some of them are taller than others. There's Jack. And that's because in the last couple of weeks I haven't felt super well, and sometimes I did forget to turn on the light until the middle of the day. These have been inside my house under a grow light, and it does not take long for seedlings to start to get stretched out looking for the light. But these are actually in some pretty small cell trays, and I do need, look at that, I do need to up pot them. These little tiny cell trays are not meant to keep seedlings for very long at all. But I want to show you what I have. So these are Brussels sprouts right here. One of these is broccoli, one of these is cauliflower, and then we have some cabbage. I can't exactly remember what's what, but I do have a note somewhere. Don't eat it, I'll be right back. You sit right here. All right, so these little tiny seed starting trays. I actually really like them. My seed starting space is really small. I only have a couple of grow lights inside my very small house. And I think maximum I could probably keep about 6 of these trays inside, and that would be rotating 3 trays under the light during the day and 3 trays under the light during the night. Now when you're doing something like that, it's important to keep the trays that are in the night mode, even if it's daytime where you're at, keep them in the darkness, or else they're going to start to get leggy like that. So we keep our bedroom pitch black, and I have a shelf in there, so the seedlings that are taking their break from the light, they'll hang out in there, and then the seedlings that need to be under the light will be under the light. Look at how cute. This is the perfect little plug to put in here. And ideally, these are going to go into the greenhouse the 1st of October or around there. And there's plenty of soil and nutrition in this pot for that amount of time. There's these little holes in the bottom where I can push my finger in, get the plug out, and then plop it on over here. And Jack is gonna leave him alone. Yes, he is. Sir. So I've announced it already with our members, and I did talk about it on the community tab, but I started a second channel where you can see our animals' point of view of our farm. So I have quite a few videos on there where I put a camera on a goat and I put a camera on the cat, and you can see them running around doing all kinds of things. And I've actually been really fascinated to see what they get up to when I'm not exactly around. It's been really fun. So I will link that in the description box and in the pinned comment if you're interested in checking that out. Also, I wanted to notify you guys that right now is a really good time to be paying attention to seed companies. This is the time of year where they have to get rid of their 2024 seed in order to prepare for next year, because according to like seed labeling laws and things, they cannot sell this year's seed next year. So they've got to get all their inventory out. So be looking for sales. And speaking of sales, there is actually a really good one going on right now with Epic Gardening. This sale is up to 30% off. And if you stack our coupon code, you can get up to 35% off. And there's a lot of good things on sale right now. It includes the garden beds, and it includes the grow bags that I've really been enjoying growing in. My favorite is the 15-gallon grow bag. That's what I'm growing our armpit melons in right now. And our Nanking cherries. I feel like that size is a good size. It allows the plant to really stretch out its roots, really have access to a lot of nutrition in 15 gallons of soil. Epic Gardening is actually where I picked up these seed trays, and they've got a whole line of really awesome seed starting trays and stuff. So I'll link that in the description box too if you'd like to check that out. Now, a lot of the fall and winter garden I am going to direct seed, because a lot of it is going to be like leafy greens. I want to grow some kale. I could start those things early, but I don't need to start them this early. Things like lettuces don't need much of a head start. They don't really take that long to come to fruition, while things like Brussels sprouts can take 120 days or more, especially when the days are getting shorter. Things tend to take longer. So we're growing into the fall and not from the winter into the spring, and so things can be a little bit different in the fall garden. So these are the kinds of things that need a little bit more time, and the things that don't need as much time, I'm not really worried about starting those in these kinds of start trays. We should be able to start those right in the garden. But one tray down, several to go. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of them tonight, but it's at least a start. Good morning. I don't have your food yet this morning. Okay, so we've met back at the greenhouse, but we're not going in the greenhouse quite yet. We need to talk about the lane. Oh, the girls are feisty this morning. I guess I'll leave the camera like this, so you can either look at the lane and the plants if you want to, or you can look at these antics if you want to and be well entertained regardless. So over here, I talked about last week that I saved some seed for a couple of years trying to stabilize a certain variety. It's called the armpit melon, something that I've dubbed it. Well, I got something that's other than what I wanted last week. The melon that I want has a specific It has a specific scent and it's got a different color on the inside. The melon that we harvested last week was green on the inside, and that came actually from this trellis right here. I have two different armpit melons out here right now. And actually I got a ripe melon off of this trellis a little bit after the garden tour last week, and this one is actually orange on the inside. So these plants are a little bit sickly. It's been a hard year for them. At first it was really, really wet, and then it got really, really dry, and so they are producing some fruit. It's just not to the quality that I think these seeds are capable for. So I did get what resembles more of an armpit melon out of this plant this week, and that does make me happy. But because I've got it so close to something that isn't quite what I want, I don't think I want to risk saving this seed in order to potentially get across that's something I don't want. So we're just going to be eating these this year, and I'll plant the seed that I planted this year, the armpit melon seed, in order to work on the stabilization of these genes again next year. Look at what I found on the ground. I didn't know this was out here, so yes. Yes, this is much, much closer to armpit, but like I said, because it's so close to this other melon that is not what I want, I'm not gonna be saving seeds from this year. That is a lot closer to normal. Now it's a lot smaller than I've seen in years past, but it very well could be a nutrition thing, and the fact that this plant has kind of been suffering essentially the whole year. Whoops, I'm gonna drop. That's not too shabby. I haven't harvested the chicken and dumplings cowpeas since last week, but I think this is more than we got last week. And when I shelled and dried those peas, I got a quart of dried peas, which is really awesome. These tend to rehydrate 3 times their size. So as far as like cooked peas go, that'd be 3 quarts, and that is easily 3 meals for us. So I'm very happy with it. The plants themselves are getting pretty yellow in certain spots. We have had a very dry, really month for the last month. There is drip irrigation underneath of them, and I have been running that periodically, but I think the sun has been pretty intense for them. But also a measure of yellowing and leaf drop is quite normal for cowpeas. We do have another series of hot days before we cool down again, and this time I hope the cool weather stays. It's been close to 100 degrees the last couple of days. I know I talked about in the last garden tour how it was like early fall or whatever. It was a false fall, as I sort of expected. I'm not gonna complain though, I really didn't want fall to come that fast. I did end up having mercy on my volunteer birdhouse gourd, which volunteered over in the grass right here and has attached itself to the trellis. I brought it about 10 gallons of water in a bucket and just sort of dumped it here. I felt bad for it that we hadn't been getting a lot of rain, but hopefully it holds out. It looks like we're supposed to get rain this weekend. I call this the cow side of the lane because my neighbor's cows are right there. This is where we have our melon trellis. This is a brand new bed to us this year. I layered hay, manure, potting mix, a little bit of granular fertilizer, and then some mulch. And we planted some seeds in that. And it took these plants a while to really get going, but they are getting going. Even this sad one over here that we've been following, I wasn't sure it was gonna produce at all. And it looks like it is going to. These two right here are honey melons. And I don't see any, oh wait, maybe this one is. Yeah, this one is going to be a melon. We have a female flower here with a little immature fruit at the base of the flower. There's another one over here. And then these two here are Kajari melons. You see them down there? They're the coolest looking things. They're getting bigger by the day, and I did haul buckets of water over to this bed too. Have you all calmed down for the time being? My daughter's been trying to catch a rat in the greenhouse for a couple days. She succeeded today. I do have garden kitties that do a really good job up close towards the house, but they don't really come back here that often. So we still have a rodent problem out here. There we go. I think we can at least temporarily turn off the fans in here. The sun is just now peeking up over the horizon. It's wild and crazy in here, you guys, but also incredibly beautiful. This Malabar spinach has really been the highlight of my garden this year. I have actually stopped harvesting it recently, but I think I need to start harvesting it again. I wanted it to be full and beautiful like this. This has turned into the exact focal point that I had hoped that it would. And it's been putting on so many of these little berries with seeds inside that I've been told we can expect volunteers basically until the end of time, which I'm here for. Over here I have this cucumber that I've been using as a trap crop for aphids, and it's been working very well. I have been trying to keep this alive as long as possible, even though the aphids are going to do it in. There's also some kind of like a mildew over here. I don't know. This plant is sick, but I know that nothing else in the greenhouse really is. And so I'll take it. I really haven't been harvesting over here at all. So this is a miniature white cucumber, and this one is definitely overripe. This one's probably okay. It might be a little bitter because of the heat we've had this week. You can see that our tomatillos still have a lot of lovely blooms on them. So we have harvested quite a few tomatillos, but I have a feeling we're going to be overrun. I had heard that tomatillos would produce like crazy, and I hadn't really experienced it yet, but it's coming. Actually, we have had quite a few fall on the ground. You can see these big ones here. These are the tomatillos. And then the smaller ones, these are the ground cherries, which my ground cherries haven't been doing super awesome this year. They got pretty bogged down with the pest pressure that we had earlier in the year, and they basically haven't recovered. I did make a really nice tomatillo salsa verde recently with a tomatillo harvest, and it's a lot sweeter than I expected. These fruits themselves are a lot sweeter than I expected to begin with. So you guys have probably already noticed that I put in, it's called a terror eye ball. This is for birds. I don't like it when the birds come in here and peck at my seedlings. So I also have these little fake snakes. This is something that our Amish friends do to protect their outdoor things. They will lay fake snakes around everywhere, and it does work. These are our yellow wax pole beans. They're definitely starting to climb. See, this one's actually pretty tall. And over here where I have more snakes, last week I showed you how these plants were basically picked over. They were just little nubs. And since I put the little snake here, we have some new leaves that it looks like the birds are leaving alone. So I don't know, time will tell whether or not this works super well in here, but so far so good. I apparently have a fallen tomato. Doesn't look like something I want to eat, so I will probably leave it right here. There are, however, quite a few tomatoes that I do want to eat. This one is called the Berkeley's Tie-Dye, and it's beautiful. I believe this one is called the Hillbilly Tomato. I grew a lot of orange tomatoes this year. This one is called Worm Eaten. That's what that one's called. No, it's actually called the Brandywine Black, but something that I have noticed ever since putting the terror eye balls up here and the snakes is that the worms have gotten worse, which makes sense. The birds probably came in here not only to peck at the seedlings and the fresh greenery that they can get, but there's a lot of caterpillar pressure in here, and I don't know, nature has a balance, and sometimes when you try to fight it, it doesn't end up being worth it. So we'll see. I'm gonna leave everything up for right now, really being that we are towards the end of the season, especially for things like tomatoes. I may not stress about this too much because really I would like my fall and winter things to be able to get a head start. We'll put that in there upside down and you'll never know. Look, it's Instagram ready. I was gonna bring out one of my small ceramic berry containers so we could make a harvest of cherry tomatoes. That looked pretty, but I didn't bring it out here, so I may just leave these for today. Super good. Now I did water yesterday, so really for optimum flavor, these tomatoes could stand to sit just a little bit longer, but not a lot longer. Tomatoes can't just sit on the vine indefinitely. They do drop off and get soft. But our cherry tomatoes have officially reached the top of the trellis. That one is actually touching the top of the greenhouse. And there's a lot of immature fruit on here. My cherry tomatoes got a little bit of a late start, but they're producing. This lovely monstrosity is a birdhouse gourd that is doing well. I watered in here with the irrigation. I actually still have these peppers down here on a drip irrigation. And the greenhouse here has kind of a downward slope, so when I run the irrigation, plenty does soak into the ground, but then excess kind of flows this way and that volunteer gets watered. So we do have a lot going on here in the pepper row. Many of the red roasters are starting to turn color, as well as put on little tiny buds for future fruits. You can see that this jalapeno here, this is probably a jalapeno. It's got lots of baby fruits and flowers, and then fruits that are basically ready for the picking. Many of the plants are absolutely taller than me at this point, which I have never gotten to experience before, so this trellising method has been really fun to experience. Not all of the peppers willingly grew upward, I believe. Yeah, I've got my King of the North right here, which this one is only about 2.5, 3 feet tall, which is pretty normal for a pepper plant. Yeah, this is basically like one of those box style peppers. This is one of those Peppergate peppers that was supposed to be a jalapeno that's actually a wax pepper. And then over here I have my pimento pepper, which I absolutely love the flavor on. It just doesn't grow vertically very well. I had trimmed and trained all of these peppers the same. Some of them are easily 3 times taller than others. So really interesting note. I actually don't plan to harvest any peppers today. Peppers are a little bit different than tomatoes, where you can leave them on a little bit longer and they'll just kind of wait for you until you're ready. Plus, as I mentioned, I just watered, and when you water peppers, it kind of tends to dilute the flavor. It's best to let them get a little bit dry if you like the maximum flavor, and heat if you like heat. This Black Beauty variety of eggplant does get a little bit bigger. Isn't that pretty? And while we're over here, we'll talk about this bed. This is one that I haven't gotten a lot of production out of this year. A lot of these nightshades were put in here later, and so they're just a lot smaller than a lot of the other plants. But I have this lovely tomato, which is one of my favorites. It's a Belgian giant. It's been hot again this week, so the plants have been dropping more blossoms. You can see here, they're just, you know, they're giving up. See? There are some more blossoms up here. I don't know if they're gonna hang on. I kind of doubt it. In contrast, the peppers back here have really been loving the heat, as peppers do. These did take a while to get going, but we're starting to get some little peppers. This one is an Edgevarsky. And then I showed this last week. These are shishitos here. And I learned last week that some shishitos are hot. So I picked a pepper off of the same shishito plant that I tried a pepper off of last week. And it still had a tiny bit of heat, but nothing like the pepper that I had tried from the same plant just a couple of days earlier. So really interesting is some peppers on the same plant can have varying levels of heat with the shishito. Yep, I think it's definitely time for me to come out and get some more basil for pesto. I think I have quite a few people that are following the garden tours, but not necessarily the rest of the channel, which is absolutely fine. But if you want to see some of the things that I'm doing with the produce that we're harvesting, I have been making essentially daily content that I've condensed down to post weekly as far as our food preservation goes. I'll leave links to those videos in the description box. I almost walked away without our eggplant. It's actually really awesome to see the tomatoes from this side. You can see how lush and happy these plants are. It is a very stark difference from how sick they were earlier in the year. Look at those big tomatoes way up there. Now there is some bug pressure. I see some aphids and whiteflies. There's actually quite a few right here. See that? I'm just gonna leave them and see what happens, because so far the plants look like they're tolerating it okay. We're definitely at the point of the season where it's not worth the fight, and I'm not sure that it was worth the fight before. Over here on this side, these are the orange accordion tomatoes. I haven't gotten to harvest any of these this year because of how sick the plants were earlier in the year. Oh, I cannot wait for these to ripen. Isn't that amazing? A lot of these plants, I've kind of stopped trying to trellis, so this is the last point of contact that that vine has with the trellis, and then it's just grown big and heavy and kind of flopped over. This does happen. It's okay. It's obviously not ideal for airflow, but it is okay. that pumpkin. Holy moly. Okay, big one here. There's a big one out there, there's one there, there's one there. There's so many amazing pumpkins in here. Now I have had to water this week. This is a really big area. I forget how big it is, but you can see my sprinkler. I had to move it little by little for about 3 days. It took me to water the pumpkin patch. And this is the first time that I've really had to water the pumpkin patch at all ever since I put the seeds in the ground. I put the seeds in the ground, I babied those for about a week, and then after that, I did not water them because we had such a great spring with a consistent amount of rain that I didn't need to. I wanted to come back and look at this big one. I am actually able to walk through here a little bit more easily than I was before. Some of the foliage has died back, but it looks like the plant is putting on new foliage. So these guys are pretty resilient. These are Dutch fork pie pumpkins, and they're huge. I'm trying to get us to make our way over to the sunflower because at least this one has a bunch of little flowers on it. Actually, the pumpkin vines have grown this way through the fence, and they're depositing quite large gourds on the other side. And just standing right here next to the sunflower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's just what I can see in my, immediate field of vision. I can't really see out through there through all the foliage. And a lot of people have asked me, Heather, what are you going to do with all of these pumpkins? So I planted this many just to give myself the best opportunity to get one pumpkin. All I wanted was one pumpkin, and we have way more than that, and I'm so grateful for it. So I have a lot of nieces and nephews. My husband is one of 6, and everybody has a bunch of kids, and so we have plenty of nieces and nephews that when it's time, when the leaves die back and the pumpkins are cured and ready to be taken home, each niece and nephew can come in here and get at least one pumpkin each, and we'll have plenty for ourselves. You can also use pumpkin if you've got a lot of it and you don't have a lot of nieces and nephews. You can use it as an animal feed. Actually, some of my goats have been really good at eating the pumpkin, and those goats are not super wormy. Pumpkin is pretty well known as a natural dewormer, and I can say that it probably works. I haven't done any specific testing with fecals and things. It's just what I've noticed with my goats lately. The ones that have had pumpkin, that are in the same area-ish as some of the ones that haven't had pumpkin, the ones that did have pumpkin are faring much better. We do have squash bugs. It's not to say that we don't have some bug pressure, but these pumpkins are persevering, which is exactly what I need. My camera actually died of the heat earlier at 7:30 in the morning. So I've been running the sprinklers here in the raised bed garden, the perennial garden as well. And I had a bucket sitting here so I could determine exactly how much rain fell, or how much the sprinkler rained down on the garden, which was sufficient. Looked about 2 inches of rain in there. And the lovely scallop squash is responding accordingly. These have actually been growing in the blink of an eye. They have just been getting massive in no time. I grew these last year along the ground. These ones are actually vertically trellised, which I'm really loving this method of growing this type of squash. I can see the squash really well. There's a lot of airflow. There is a little bit of a bug on that, but they haven't minded. However, I don't think I've seen them get as big as they are getting over here. So I can't remember what I grew in that spot last. It might have been greens, I can't recall, but I do know that when I planted the seed over here, I amended those holes only with a bagged mushroom compost that I've been finding here locally for $5 for 40 pounds. It's actually this stuff right here. This is what is powering those particular plants. I have this yellow variety over here, which is doing just as well as the white one. Some of these tend to have more green on them than others. We will talk about this melon in just a second, but in order to get over to the other side of the squash plant, I need to step over. Look at that! Oh my goodness. That is so big. So this melon down here is also powered by that mushroom compost. This is called the Ginger's Pride melon, and these melons get about 15 pounds each, so they get really big. So clearly they're going to be eating a lot. And see, we've got one down here that is starting to get the classic shape and texture of these melons. It's not obviously as big as it's gonna get, but see, they start out kind of looking green and fuzzy like this. Then this is like the next phase. So clearly this is also well fed. I fed this okra with the same compost, and I need to harvest these. These get a little bit, you know, woody if I don't get to them pretty quickly. But this size is about as big as I would want to harvest them. You can actually tell before you go ahead and bite into an okra if it's going to be really palatable by just bending it while you're in the garden. So this one has a decent bit of bend. You can tell that when you bite into it, it's going to be nice and tender, especially when it's cooked. This one is a little less flexible, and I can feel like the hard ribbing on the inside. This one may not be as delicious. And if you couldn't tell by the flower, okra is in the hibiscus family. This is pretty. This is not fully open. The Alabama red okra did finally set its first pod. It's quite small, so I'm going to leave that for now. Really, the rest of this particular garden is pretty much chaos, but I do have some things that I am intentionally watching out for as part of this chaos garden, and I see a flush of pink. This here is a Belgian giant. This is my favorite tomato. We have it planted in the greenhouse. It's been trying to fruit basically all year, and it's been unable to, but the one that's out here has fruited. This was actually a volunteer. Someone had asked me, how do volunteer plants happen? Well, a volunteer plant comes up from a seed that was dropped either in the previous year or years prior. I have had seeds pop up from things that I did not grow the previous year that I guess just lay dormant in the soil until conditions were right. But we grew these tomatoes on that trellis last year, and inevitably some fruit falls, critters get to it, whatever, and the seed is just there on the ground. And a very opportunistic seed that has a good stroke of good luck can take hold and get going. And the volunteer plants, if you can let them grow, a lot of times plants that really persevered and made it, you know, against all odds, those are the strongest plants that are very well adapted to your specific climate. So this particular Belgian giant, I'm going to let it ripen inside on the counter a little bit longer, but I'm going to be saving seeds from this one. Look at that, bigger than all the rest, and I didn't grow it on purpose. Speaking of volunteers, I realized just now that we didn't check on the volunteer white zucchini that I have growing in the pumpkin patch. I'll put a clip in here of what I managed to dig out over there today, and then this is the bounty from everything else that we got today. Still lovely, beautiful harvest, albeit smaller than I was harvesting in the years prior. It's been kind of a funny year, but we're still getting a lot of really great food, harvesting a lot of lessons, and for all of it, I'm super grateful. I'll see you guys again soon.